In a bookstore in the heart of Paris, one of the best-known storytellers in the children's literary world is giving a reading. Poet, performer and broadcaster Michael Rosen has over 140 books and a children's laureate title to his name. English cartoonist Quentin Blake, best known for illustrating books by Roald Dahl, often imagines his stories to life. Growing up in North London in the 50s laid the foundation for many of the tales he's about to tell.
1, 2, 3, Michael Rosen being interviewed.
What's the first story or poem that you remember having written?
The very first story I wrote, I stole. There was a book called Solomon the Cat, and I thought it was a very good book. And my teacher, I was 7, and my teacher said we had to write a story, and I called my story Solomon the Cat by Michael Rosen. It got printed in the newspaper.
Oh,
I didn't tell them that
it was plagiarised.
No, and I didn't tell my dad either. But some years later, no, some months later, I think it was, a letter came in saying that someone had read a story about a cat called Solomon who, you know, leaves home. And my dad said, "Look at this. Someone's stolen Michael's story." If I had the time, I'd try and sue the pants off them. I went, no, it's okay. You know, it was ages ago. Solomon the Cat by Michael Rosen, age 7 3/4.
You had a short stint at medical school, but then you decided to make a break for it.
I managed to convince the college. What was much harder was to convince my father, who rather hoped that I would be a doctor. For him, doctors are saints, and then if you were a Jewish doctor, then that's sort of even above a saint, whatever that is. We're sort of getting to be Jesus now, I think. I'm not quite sure. I don't want to be sacrilegious, but anyway. And then if you could be a Jewish communist doctor, then you were God. So he rather hoped I'd be a Jewish communist doctor, but I didn't. I didn't become any of those things, really. Well, kind of.
To write for a child, do you have to think like one?
How can I put it? You have to go back to when you were a child and think about what kind of things you liked. I mean, I sometimes think I write for the child I was and then mix that with the children that I meet.
Do you enjoy getting into that space of mind?
Yes, it is just that, but then all writing is like that. You go into a space and people think of writing as you talking, but in actual fact it's having a conversation. It's rather odd. You have a conversation with what you write. So you put things down on the page and you talk to it. I know it sounds slightly, but in fact what you're doing is you write some words and then you talk to it in your mind to check whether it's saying what it is you want to say.
We're going on a bear hunt!
One of your most loved stories is We're Going on a Bear Hunt, illustrated by Helen Oxenberry. It was made into a film last year. How important is it to strike the right balance between what you write and the illustrations?
Well, in that particular case, that was an adaptation of a folk song, or a kind of song that, like in France, Colonie de Vacances, it was summer camp, American summer camps, and the Brownies, you know, who are part of the scouting movement, they had versions of it, and then I adapted that, and then basically I just handed it over to Helen to make whatever she wanted to. I didn't feel sort of, this is my property and it must stay sacred. But what she did that was truly wonderful was to create a kind of epic family narrative. I think it's more than a book. I do. I think it's a sort of experience. She did that, not me.
You said that writing sad stories can be liberating. Several of your books touch on sadness. One in particular, The Sad Book, which is illustrated by Quentin Blake. It tells the story of your son who died. Parents often shield their children from things that are confronting. Why did you feel that this was a story that needed to be told?
Well, it started, I didn't think it did need to be told, but it started from a child asking me, because I'd written about Eddie as a baby, and I'd written about him in a book where Eddie was a sort of 2-year-old, 3-year-old, being very funny and mischievous. And so children were asking me, well, what happened to Eddie? Meaning, what's he doing now? So they meant sort of aged then about 19, 20. So I would have to say he died, because he died when he was nearly 19. Now, children will sometimes say, well, what did he die of? They don't go, oh, I'm so sorry, and put their heads in their hands, which is what adults do. They go, oh, right, yeah, what did he die of? And then I'd say, well, meningitis. And they go, oh, right, how does that work? So I thought, oh, well, they do want to know. They do want it. And then they say, well, how do you feel about that? They don't go, I better not ask him how he feels. Children say, well, how do you feel about it? And so I thought, well, I could tell them. Because if they know about the Eddie poems, which they did from this book, Quick, Let's Get Out of Here, well, then I could tell them in another book what happened to him and how I feel about it. So it was really just sort of thinking it was a continuation of what I'd already done. And so it seemed to make sense.
Eddie hates having his nappy done. So I say all cheery, time for your nappy, Eddie. And he says all sad, no nappy. And I say, yes, nappy. So I have to run after him going, nappy, 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 nappy. And he's got these little fat rubbery legs that go round like wheels.
You also write for adults.
Yes.
Your most recent book is this one right here, The Disappearance of Émile Zola. It explores the French writer's period of exile in England. What drew you to this story?
My wife, Emma Louise Williams, she is a radio producer, and so we're always on the search for interesting, intriguing, significant stories, symbolic stories of some sort or another. And I came across this fact that Émile Zola went on the run. He was sentenced to a year's imprisonment and 3,000 franc fine, and came to England. But he didn't come to some sort of glamorous bohemian writers' circle. He kind of hid in the suburbs of South London. And I thought, well, this is bizarre. What is Émile Zola, author of Germinal, L'Assommoir, Nana, Thérèse Raquin, what is he doing in these rather banal suburbs of South London? Why did he come? And then the more I looked at it, the more extraordinary it became. Emma made a radio program about it with me presenting, and as I was working on it, more and more questions arose. It got bigger and bigger, and so it turned into a book.
Chocolate cake. When I was a boy, I had a favourite treat. It was when my mum made chocolate cake. Oh, I loved chocolate cake.
Well, you made your mark with funny poems and stories for children inspired by your life. Now, based on those, I'd like to know, do you still get excited by chocolate cake?
No, I better say yes, hadn't I? No, my favourite actually is fruitcake.
Fruitcake. So your tastes have evolved?
Yes, which I believe the French call le cake.
Strict. We had a teacher who was so strict, you weren't allowed to breathe in her lessons.
Out of habit, do you still hold your breath whenever you see a teacher?
I don't usually. It's not my reaction, because normally they're asking me to speak. When I go into a classroom, a teacher might say, right, and we've got Michael Rosen here, and tell us a poem, Michael Rosen.
Let's put it to the test. We'll have a little competition between Michael and I to see who could hold their breath longer.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go. Michael beat me. I've been put to shame. You could have gone longer as well.
I think I could die, though. Yeah, no, I used to do a lot of swimming. I used to do a lot of underwater swimming and things like that.
Wow, I'm impressed.
I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau.
That brings us to the Michael Rosen Rap, the legendary rap.
Oh, yes.
I'm a big fan of.
Yes.
You've got a great flow, Michael.
Thank you.
I have to say.
I'm not really a rapper, though, am I? Do you know what I mean? It's just it's sort of, you know, with the sort of little English jacket and saying it's not exactly down there, is it? It's not down and dirty, is it?
Well, I was going to say, do you think Eminem or Kendrick Lamar might come calling or make a cameo?
I don't think so. I only wrote that rap because I lived next door to 3 boys of African Caribbean origin, and they came to me and said, can you write some hip-hop? That dates it for how long ago it was. And I went, what's hip-hop? And of course, my kind of English literature head went, is it a 4-beat line? Well, that's interesting. That sounds like tetrameter. Okay, so it's not very rapid.
Not very rap,
no. But then I was
not
kind of
very
going,
gangster.
you may think I'm happy, you may think I'm sad, you may think I'm crazy. Yeah, hey, you could double that up. You may think I'm happy, think I'm happy, think I'm mad. Hey, yeah, that would work. You may think I'm crazy, think I'm crazy, think I'm... Hey, that would work. Yeah, so that's how it sort of, and I began to work it, but it did feel a bit odd coming out of my mouth.
A hip hop, a hip hop hap. I'm giving you all the Michael Rosen rap, 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 rap.
We ran into a few of your fans here at the Shakespeare and Company in Paris, and they were eager to ask you a few questions. Have a listen.
If you could be a superhero, who would you be?
Incredibly boring man. He just talks about kind of timetables and things like that, and the monsters just fall asleep.
What's your favorite book?
Oh, the complete works of Shakespeare. So I am going to cheat, so yes, the complete works of Shakespeare.
What was your last dream about?
I think football was involved. My son rather likes Cristiano Ronaldo, whereas I like Lionel Messi. And I have a funny feeling we were arguing about them because he's sure that Ronaldo is sort of better than Messi or sort of greater than Messi, whereas I'm not so sure.
I'd have to side with him. I'm a Ronaldo fan.
Fine. Well, I think this interview is nearly at an end.
It is.
Yeah, it better be.
You recently said that stories don't end at the end. What lingers beyond that final full stop?
Well, the wonderful thing is what lingers is what you choose to want to linger. Now, when I say choose, you do some of that knowingly, but other stuff, it just pops up. So if you think of any story that you love, enjoy, any movie, ballet, opera, poem that's a story or whatever, tomorrow, a month's time, a year's time, bits of it surface. They kind of float up into sort of behind your eyes. Now, some of that's because you really want to hang on to it, and others, it's you can't stop it happening. And sometimes it's because a connection is made between something in the story and something you just heard, and you don't always control that. It appears to happen involuntarily. So that's what I mean, is that stories don't end when it says the end. They go on and on, affecting your life in lots of different ways.
Thank you very much for sharing your story with us, Michael Rosen.
Thank you.
We're going to end it there. I'm going to go put my Cristiano Ronaldo number 7 on.
Fine. No, it's okay. It's fine. No, okay. I was guessing that some French people watch this in order to learn English.
Yes.
So I was being slightly more precise than I usually am.
You were fantastic.
I
Thank
just
you
thought,
very much.
Was that all right, Guillaume? Did you understand everything I was saying?
Could you take one more for me?
No? No. Oh, right.